News Director Bradford Raths has been in Indianapolis over the past few days and files this report from the Statehouse.
As this year's legislative session winds down, local lawmakers continue working on this year's bills while also keeping an eye on the future. Though this session has featured budget talks, construction wage repeals, and controversy over religious freedom, one bill that has remained under the radar has been ongoing ethics reform efforts in the General Assembly. House Bill 1002 was heard by the Senate on Wednesday and it passed by a 49-1 vote. The House passed the same bill unanimously back in February. The new bill expands requirements for reporting conflicts of interest that a lawmaker may have, along with any conflicting lobbyist involvement in their legislation. The bill also would require lawmakers to report any active business investments of no less than $5,000. Currently, that restriction begins at $10,000. Now, this bill came about in response to ethics issues surrounding a former lawmaker, along with former state schools superintendent Tony Bennett. District 48 Senator Mark Messmer says the reform is important to keep history from repeating itself.
Most of us have regular jobs, and how you deal with your regular job and how it might be influenced on issues that we deal with in the General Assembly. When you have a conflict and when you have a vested interest in something, full disclosure of where those conflicts might be, and then how to set up policies to deal with that. We just want to make sure that we don't have people benefiting from legislation that they vote on or that they author.
House and Senate leaders sponsored this bill, which now heads back to the House for a concurrence vote. As for other ongoing legislative issues, lawmakers continue to work on the new budget, which would substantially increase road and education funding. Road funding has continued to be a difficult issue, stemming from declining gasoline tax revenue. District 63 Representative Mike Braun is serving on the House Ways and Means and Roads and Transportation Committees. Braun says the state will have to solve the problem itself, as more federal help is not a likely alternative.
And the condition they're in, and with the amount of funds we've been getting from them compared to what we used to, that would be a false hope. I think the best thing is to get a long-term mechanism that works within the state, but the next best thing, and probably the thing that's going to actually work, is localities and regions need to look at how they might do some things to at least get the ball rolling.
Braun says work also remains on how to collect revenues from people who drive alternative fuel vehicles. Meanwhile, District 74 Representative Lloyd Arnold is also continuing to push some of his legislation. That included an effort to make changes to teacher retirement plans that would allow for beneficiaries to be changed more easily. That made it through both the House and the Senate. Arnold says for most of his other bills, it's been a bit of a juggling act.
Your bills that you may have pass, almost unanimous out of the House, when they get over to the Senate, they may not even get a hearing. So, it's one of those things where, the legislation I do have, it's a little bit stagnant. So, now we're trying to find places in Conference Committee.
District 47 Senator Erin Houchin was unavailable to comment for this story. However, she has pushed for changes in state tests, such as the iRead 3, along with trying to bring broadband internet service to more rural southern Indiana communities. Even with all that has been done this year, there are issues to address in the future. Braun names one big area where Indiana can get better.
We can save the state a lot of money over time if we can get our hands around continually rising healthcare costs. One thing, it was too complicated a bill to probably move through easily. I'll probably bring it up again next year if it doesn't get studied during the summer. Hospitals did do exactly what I was wanting to have done in that bill. Ironically, I found that out about 2 to 3 weeks after I introduced the legislation.
Braun introduced a bill this session that would have required more transparency from hospitals about what they are charging people. The bill ultimately was tabled in the Senate. Conference committee work has been underway since Wednesday. This legislative session ends April 29th.
Thank you, Bradford. Weather, sports, and inform were still to come on 18 WJTS News. Please stay tuned.